medicine, well, for number one, it's only pharmaceuticals. And number two, that that's what healthcare is, right? So
Right.
healthcare equals pharmaceuticals. Healthcare equals this. And if you don't have a pharmaceutical, then that's not healthcare. And I'm like, and that's just never what was done in the world up until the early 1900s.
I was gonna say, when did that shift? When do you think that shift happened? Because as far as Western medicine goes, like the development of you're saying pharmaceuticals, but even before that, I mean, do you consider like a vaccine? Is that, I mean, that's pharmaceutical, right? That you have a drug company that's got to make that, right?
Sure.
When do you think, I mean, you're saying early 1900s. So is it when they started developing vaccines using petroleum?
Mm-hmm.
Is that like where there was like this shift towards, okay, now we're just going to, I don't know how you were to treat these conditions, these
Right.
diseases with this vaccine or with this drug, as opposed to what the naturopathic world was saying. We're digging for root causes to change the progress of what your body's doing, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying you have this, something gave this to you, and now let's give you this so you don't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do you think that was kind of like around that time? Is that when that really stuff was started to shift? Is that where like maybe naturopathic medicine and Western medicine kind of really went different directions?
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge rise of that, or a huge part of that shift happening right at the turn of the century, the turn of the 1900s. The stuff around vaccines had been going on for trying to figure that out for much longer than that. I mean, that's, if you really want to learn about that, that's like the whole smallpox history and things like that.
Measles and
even before measles. Yeah. So, but I mean, a lot of that was around the turn of the century. But yeah, I think there is, Rockefeller and Carnegie and a lot of these, barons of industry and had their fingers in a lot of different areas and realized that the medical model around developing using petroleum and things could potentially be beneficial. So the narrative really shifted, and there was actually a report that was done, and I'm not going to get the date right because I don't remember, somewhere in the 1920s. It's called the Flexner Report, and it was a commission that was started by Andrew Carnegie, and I think JP Morgan was involved as well. I can't remember, probably.
At that time.
They basically, this guy named Abram Flexner, who was not even really a medical person, was tasked with traveling around the country and looking at all the medical schools. And at the time, there were a lot of different types of medical schools. We could put the chiropractic world into this. We can put the osteopathic world into this. We can put naturopaths, of course. There are other ones too that most people really wouldn't even know about. Like there's a whole, like they called the eclectics. Of course, there's a lot of like Native American type stuff out there. But anyway, he was tasked with evaluating the medical education, and the standard that he was using to compare everything was Yale Medical School. And Yale had started to really go down the pharmaceutical and the surgical route for treatments of things. And so that led to this sort of grading of all the different types of education and types of programs and types of, essentially at the end of the day, medicine. So what was accepted at the time, or what was given like the A, right, the A+, was the schools that were kind of the more Yale type model, and then the other ones were downgraded. And over time, after that report came out, you started to see funding shift dramatically away, and I shouldn't say away, but probably into the model that we see today,
the modern medical school.
And again, what was funny was so much of it was like going on together at the time, and I think there were I mean, it's wild when you go back and look at some of the pharmaceutical interventions that were being done up until this point. Like, like mercury.
Which, by the way, if you guys don't know, and obviously it's going to keep coming up on the video side, is Dr. Matt on Instagram. He posts a lot of these types of topics, even
Dr. Matt Reddy.
Dr. Matt at Dr. Matt Reddy. But follow, because he's been doing some mercury stuff recently, and it's been pretty fascinating to read this stuff.
Yeah.
And Reddy is Reddy.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Dr. Matt Reddy is the Ready is the anti-naturopathic doctor. It's the opposing side of Western medicine. Yeah. It's some pharmaceutical company.
Evil twin.
Your arch enemy.
My arch enemy. Right.
Yeah.
That's funny. Mercury. So bring it back to mercury. Yeah. A lot of the work I do, mercury stuff is pretty interesting just as far as what it's doing to our health. But when we go back and look historically of how they used mercury, it was actually a major treatment for syphilis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was common. It was just like that. That's what you gave people. And we kind of look at that now. We're like, what? Like the horribly toxic thing to give people. That was like the norm. But that would not have been what a naturopathic doctor would have done. That is not what any kind of chiropractic physician would have recommended. I mean, at the time. So it was very clearly a symptom treatment. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't even know what the mechanism would be of mercury. Maybe it did get rid of lesions and some of the stuff but it also, created a whole other issue for people. So
right.
And if you drank a bunch of bleach, you'd probably get rid of your cancer. Because it would kill you. Right?
And you as well, right?
Well, I mean, technically,
it's dead.
Right. So I mean. But at the point, again, is, of course, medicine grows and learns, and we all have, and we see these things that were toxic, and now we understand it better. And, so I'm really pro science around it. I'm pro understanding and asking questions and testing and finding out, what works with this. And it's the medical model that we have today and how it really pushes naturopathic medicine away often is they say, well, it's not evidence-based, which is not true at all.
Right.
It is evidence-based. It's evidence-based in a lot of different ways. It's not evidence-based. Everything's not evidence-based in the way a pharmaceutical might be evidence-based, but I'd even argue that most pharmaceuticals aren't really evidence-based in the way that we want to think they are. So,
I mean, there's a lot to be said for some of those things for sure. We're sitting in the middle, in my opinion, we're sitting in the middle of that right now. I mean, there's, the vaccine for COVID is, and there's 4 different drug companies now, right? AstraZeneca, Moderna, J&J, and Pfizer, right? That's 4.
Correct.
Yes. I can count this morning too. Look at me. So you've got 4 drug companies that have been around a long time. The evidence on this is, I mean, they're not able to give you much right now. I mean, people are asking questions. How long is it going to be a one-time deal? Is it going to be like the flu vaccine where it's once a year? They're telling you, we don't know yet. We don't have evidence. This is something new that we haven't seen before. This is a drug we've pushed out very quickly to kind of combat what's happened across the entire world in the last year and a half. So over time, they're going to develop statistics and evidence.
Yeah.
But right now we're seeing that that claim is very much real for these guys too, for these drug companies. There's no evidence yet. We don't have enough time.
Yeah. We have a little bit of evidence.
A little bit, yeah.
In certain ways.
You know what I hope people get from listening from this, and I'm realizing I'd love to have Dr. Reddy on again so we can talk about this more, is if you look at this logically, right? So because they're probably figuring out Dr. Reddy is a pretty smart guy. He's been doing this for 20 years. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about, right? And we're not going to cover it in an hour, right?
Right.
But if you look at what we're saying, like logically, just take all your filters off for a second and think about what you're hearing, right? And again, I go back to this real simple idea: is eating a banana healthy, right? And if you can say yes, eating a banana is widely understood is healthy, then just stay in that space, right? And then slowly start to pull away from that statement. And you can kind of work it backwards and see, not only understanding basic concepts of health, but also understanding on like how Dr. Reddy just went through kind of the history of Western medicine and this kind of birth of pharmaceuticals, typically around money, right? And
Correct,
it's around opportunity, as everything that you see around you is, right? The computer is an opportunity, and once the opportunity was discovered, there's a chance to make money, right? And you can see how it will go, right? And if you also understand that people want to protect that opportunity, then you get this real calculated, it's not misinformation, but it's very selective information to keep you as a consumer.
That's it's selective information. That's very well put. Yeah.
It's selective information. It's the same idea that every beer commercial you see is associated with fun, right? It's like, well, then we're at a barbecue, we drink. Why? Why do you understand? It's literally poison.
Yeah,
right?
show the next morning. Show the next morning from that party.
Yeah, it's a fun poison, but don't miscategorize what that is.
Yeah.
They've so well ingrained, like alcohol consumption into events, into holidays, into nice dinners and meeting your wife and
girls
sharing
in
bottles
bikinis,
of wine,
man.
girls
Imagine
in
when
bikinis, and
totally.
relaxing on the beach with a Corona. And it's like, okay, I'm not saying those things, right? Don't be a sucker, Shane.
Got me.
Yeah. But if you can just understand that, right? And it doesn't also mean that what has been created isn't potentially helpful. Humans are amazing, right? But there is a very, very stark difference between that's what it's supposed to be versus that's what can just be helpful, right? And I think, in my opinion, Dr. Reddy, where some people get this like naturopathic, like you use this whole like woohoo, right? It's they think again, and they get sucked into this vortex of what medicine is or what health is. They say, well, I have a serious problem and you're telling me to like have tea with honey. It's like, no. That you might need something, but there is the difference between this collective health, right, and this problem that you're having. And you have been brought in to think that if you don't have a symptom, then you're healthy, right? So it's like, well, I only think of health as when I have a problem. And what I think naturopathic medicine is saying, all of it is on the table all the time, right? And not just when you're experiencing this symptom, which means, if symptom, then medicine, right? And then now I'm in healthcare. And it's like, I just wish people would understand this better. It's, well, I don't have irritable bowel syndrome. Well, it doesn't mean you have a good gut biome going on, right? And and it's like, well, I don't mind my watery shits every morning. It's like, hold on a sec, man. That doesn't mean that you're not needing to get on medicine or something. You might want to address that, like understand what good gut health is, or